G'day guys, it's Calvin from the Cartoon Company in New Zealand. I do lots of 1UZ conversions and work and wiring related stuff with regard to 1UZs. So if you're into that sort of work, subscribe to my channel and there'll be lots more of similar videos to come. So behind me is a Toyota Hilux. We've got a two-wheel drive Hilux this time. It turned up recently, nice and early in the morning, 4.5 hour drive for them to bring it to me. And the man told me about this ute. It's a 92 Hilux and he owned it many years ago. He bought it off the person who did the conversion. It's a fairly tidy old Hilux. And it was sold, changed owners a couple of times. And then he has purchased, well, his son has purchased it back. But it's been a bit neglected and it's got a few issues to sort out. The little things like the thermostat housing, the other day I actually wiped it, it was all green as the antifreeze has actually been climbing through that thermostat housing. I'm going to go through and make a couple of changes in this engine department. A couple of little tricks. The tablet covers on this are leaking, but if you get in, we'll have a look. You can generally give all the tablet cover bolts a bit of a tweak up. I think I've already done this one. Oh no. Okay, so if you're not replacing the tablet cover gasket straight away, at least doing up the bolts will help it. The first test I'm going to do is check the idle system. Now this was idling at 1500 RPM. Oh, the other issue we've got here, look at this free play on this throttle, look at this. That is way too much. It does get full throttle, but it feels horrible in the cabin. We'll show you that. The man gave me a list. This is the free play. So we've got like 50 millimeters of free play. So I'll look at that. Also looking at the clutch free play, that's actually not bad. There's a little bit of clutch at the top that's not doing anything, which is perfect. And the shift is very, very floppy. I actually went to drive it and I was struggling to find gears nicely. So I'm going to put that on my list to fix. He's also given me speedo drive. That's the electronic one that's been converted over that screws onto the speedo, but it's not working. It's not contacting in the box. It's just recently had a gearbox change. So first, oh, that was loud. The light has come on. And you can see we're idling like at 1500 RPM. Come up to here, I've got that test light right in the middle there. And you may have just heard that idle stepper moving. Doesn't seem to be moving very much though, which is a little strange. So I'm going to look at that. Doesn't sound quite right. And it is, but the wiring actually passed the test. This one's running a UCF 10 ECU. So it's out of the early UCF 10. It's the first of the UCF 10 ECUs. It's tucked in behind the glove box. We'll pull that glove box out later on and have a bit of a look at that. Having a bit of a look around this ute. It's got some very nice little headers on it. They're really quite cool. We'll put it up in there and have a bit of a look underneath as well. Oh, actually, have a look. It's packed into that firewall. Now this was done a long time ago. So again, I can fit my hand between the radiator and that can cover. So there's plenty of room for radiators. That's a standard type radiator. I've got to change that radiator cap. And it's packed right into where the firewall, where that handbrake unit would be. So you need to put the correct handbrake unit on it. This was a diesel, so it's got the smaller booster on it. It's a neat airbox. It may have been suggested it was a V3000 airbox. And we can see it's a 10 series engine. Individual covers. It says on the leads 2015. Now they were changed. This motor stopped being made around the 97 mark. We have an ECU tucked in. This is looking pretty good in here actually. Some relays. And I'm not sure what these fuses, if they're related to this or not. But I'm looking pretty good. When I do them, I remove all this extra wiring here. But this was wired in place. The motor was fitted, the wiring loom wasn't done on the bench, according to the owner, many years ago. So that looks pretty good. So underneath, as I was saying, we have got these lovely headers. They're very cool. Quite small pipes. They do come right under the gearbox. So to remove the gearbox, you do have to take the exhausts off. And they do sit below the chassis line, so you wouldn't be able to lower the chute too far. Coming back, it's had a bit of a scrape here, but twin rezos into a single 3-inch with a big muffler. Look at the size of that muffler. Big muffler, then twins out the back with a bit of a dent to clear the diff. So that's pretty good. Fuel pump, I'm not a fan of external fuel pumps. I much prefer them in the tank. So I do that differently, but still looks pretty good, this job. Sump, again, it's had a big trim, which is how we used to do it back in the day. Oil filter housing has been modified, and that's quite a neat job too. All in all, a pretty neat job, and it's been done a long time ago. Fuel filter sitting up on the chassis there. Because I've got lots of little things to do on this job, I'm going to look at the speed sensor first. So I've got a screwdriver in the drive, and you can see it's turning quite nicely. I can just feel the gears just touching. So we'll see what gears I've got. See if I've got a bigger one, or whether I have to change it off another drive. It actually looks quite rounded off too. Done a bit more assessing on this Toyota, and I found the transmission loom. There it is. So it's just been cut off and taped up, so that's not ideal. For the idle issue, this is not the throttle stop. The throttle stop is down there, but someone's cranked it all the way up, so there is an idle issue in here. I'm going to do some adjusting and see if I can get the idle speed to come down quite considerably. And I will also do a separate video on rebuilding these stepper motors, because I think this one isn't moving like it should be. What do you got? Pretty flat, eh? Not the airflow meter, but look at it. Look at the piece, look at this. I don't think that's suitable. That hose is sucked in. So it's not an airflow meter. Our yellow ute's coming to pieces. Radiator's popped out. We've just lifted the leads off all in one piece. Lift all the plastics, everything. You undo it here and take the whole plastic unit out, and it keeps the leads in the right place. Actually looks like it's had distributor caps. That gives us good access down to that crank pulley. This vehicle does have a cam belt sticker on it. So in 2013, 6 years ago. So remove the loom. Yeah. Door at the front. But then you just got to check they don't break. They break in there. Unplug here. And then it'll unclip, and the injector plugs will all break as you take them off. take the plenum off, because you've got a loom that comes through the centre of this one for the diagnostic and for the idle air control. Idle air's getting rebuilt anyway, so you can take that off. And you want this out of the throttle body out of the way to get that side of it out.
So the plenum comes off?
Plenum comes off around here. Just these top bolts.
So that comes off, and then there's still the intake manifold.
Yeah,
left.
the lower manifold. Just shove some rags down it so nothing falling.
That's coming off as well, is it?
No, leave the lower manifold.
Oh, okay. So you're just doing the top of the injector seals or something?
Yeah, well the injector seals will come out really easy. You don't have to take
yeah.
You just lift we'll lift that
Okay,
fuel
so
rail
that
out.
row of bolts around the outside there.
Yeah, correct. Undo the front crank pulley.
Belt off to that.
Yeah, take the belt, and we've got to get that front pulley off. We may need to lift it and go in under the flywheel. So I'll lock up the flywheel with a pulley. There's a plate underneath on the front of the gearbox. You'll have a look at that. Take that off, and then we can get our big pry bar in there and the big power bar and take the crank pulley off. Often they need to be pulled off the crankshaft too, which is a little bit awkward in place, but we'll get there. Here's our progress so far. So leads off, again with the clip so they can just sit back on. Idle speed control in motor, and that rubber hose just totally fell to pieces when we touched it. And someone had put a restrictor in the inlet hose just to stop it from flaring so much. We're going to do that, a rebuild on that one. We'll do a separate video on the rebuild of that. Throttle body's off. Front thermostat housing assembly is all off. We're going to replace the thermostat housing itself, and the body it fits into is going to be changed with the water hoses are going to be blanked off. The upper plenum is off. Here's the other housing. So here's the other housing we've got with the welded up there and welded up there. Instead of having blankers on like that, and a new genuine housing. At the front, spark plugs are out because we're going to do a compression test. I'm just a little bit suspicious. If you've got gorilla hands, then getting the back earth is probably not the easiest, but I've got quite small hands, so it's easy to get down there. Now this one's an early engine with the cold start injector timer here, or cold start switch. And we'll probably put another temp switch in at the EFI temp switch because they just get old and cracked and ugly. Around here, just to have a note, in the injectors, this is a rubber seal that's meant to be in the bottom of the injector plug, and it's hard as rocks. So just be careful of that. It's come out of the bottom of the injector plugs. And some of the plugs, the clips are breaking off, so we'll put a new set on. There's also this plug here, which has got the start trigger in it, and the two knock sensor wires. So that unplugs and stays separate, stays with the engine. We'll be doing tappet cover gaskets as well. And very soon we'll be pulling off that crankshaft pulley. On this side, hopefully we can get it off without removing the booster, but if we have to remove the booster, it's fun. Actually, the reason we had to go down the back is because of that earth, which was a whole lot of fun. But we got it. And a good pry bar. I'll grab a pry bar, eh? I'll go all the way over here.
Got that?
It's got a proper clutch in it. It's got one of mine in it. Yep, go. Which way are we going? Bring it on gently. Wait, I'll probably go on the right side, eh?
How would it have one of your clutches in it?
It's had a clutch when it had another gearbox. Yep. Yeah, we weren't going to get that with any other way. I don't believe it, eh? They never come off that easy. What have we got in here?
It's a pulley, mate. the bottom one. Some call it the main one.
Yeah, but why is our timing wrong? Has it slipped?
I don't know. So does it slip in there, does it?
Yeah, normally slips just in here.
So if they got, is there any way to tell if it's lined up? Compare it to another one.
Yeah, it doesn't look like normally when you go take them off, you just push it and it falls off.
Yeah, yeah.
They just fall off.
If it slips and it's that easy, wouldn't it just be spinning on itself?
So we hold it. It's looking right.
Bang.
So we got another problem, man. Because that hasn't delaminated.
Should we do a compression?
We've aligned our pulley with a pulley on another engine, and it doesn't look like it's delaminated. And I've lined it back on the TDC, and that would put the timing marks out by 2 teeth on the can. So that is it's possible. It would have been bringing up a fault code for a incorrect signal for one of the sensors, but of course it had no check light. I know, I'm taking it the cam timers out. We're going to have to strip the front end and line up marks. Let's compression test it, and then you strip the front down.
Do that in there.
Yeah, it's not too bad to strip the front in place. So it covers off. So this actually looks pretty good in here for removing the ECU. If I unplug this big wire here, that's the start trigger. And unplug that one. Oh, I like this. This was actually done by someone who kind of knew what they were doing. And unplug there. Job done. And one of the tricks on these early motors, if they don't rev properly, that blue wire in the corner of that 26 pin plug, it needs to be earthed. So this is the first of the UCF 11s, but none of the extra wirings have been taken out. None of the trans wiring's been taken out. So that's going to come out. No, I'm going to have to drop the heater box out. Okay. I'll just drop that piece where the air conditioning goes. That's actually wired quite nicely in there. Wired how it should be. You just unplug the ECU from the relays. It's nice. Have they got nuts on them? Righto. And the wiring's just tucked behind this heater box. Oh, the heater, oh, the fan. So I'm just going to undo the fan. That was easy. That was done nicely.
Why there would have been nothing major.
Oh, that's all coming out. So I'm going to remove. I'm going to remove that. That one. That one. That one. Those plugs are all leaving. That plug's leaving, and then some of the wiring from here's leaving as well. Do you like that one? See that big black one over there? That's your traction control. That's leaving.
No need to be racist about it. Have you got that earth one off?
No, I haven't got that earth wire off. Number one. Can you feed that? Yeah, thanks. Igniter loop. Right. No, it's just caught up.
Cool.
Right, I'll do that, eh? I'll do the wiring. Jump some power into the start. And crank it.
You just do it all here now, can you?
I'll just do it here.
Yeah.
Like 180. Not so worried now. I think because of the cam timing, if that cam timing is wrong, yeah, that's probably why it went fluffy. As soon as it idled down, trying to get some idles down, it was just real fluffy and lumpy. And that's why it was, idle was wound up. So a bit of a tech tip, the little blanking grommet off the stepper motor can go onto the back of the engine. And that blocks up that water fitting. Easy. So here's the stepper motor. Now this is the early model stepper motor with the 3 screws around it. And we're going to pull it apart and rebuild it. So this has come apart. It's got to be rotor. Look at that. What's down here?
Yeah. What's that off?
It's got to be ignition rotor. Look.
That piece of aluminium, a bracket or something.
Oh, that's the piece that goes around the bottom of the crank.
Oh.
So there's a piece here.
Oh yeah.
There's one bit here already, and there's one piece there.
Yeah, look.
Yep, that'll do it. Wicked.
So that's what's in here, is it?
Yeah, look, it's got new caps on it. Let's take the caps off and have a look and see if it's got new rotors in it.
Yeah, I'll just have a wash it. So look what's on down.
And behind the bearing, floors now covered in them.
We're quite lucky it didn't go through.
Wow, this is a Gen 1 engine, non-interference.
Yeah, but I mean it could have
Ripped belt to bits.
cut belt, yeah.
Yep. So really fortunate it's a Gen 1. It's good to find out why it was wrong. Had a new rotor.
Looks okay to me.
So new rotor on that side, new cap. So it's
Unless they've put new rotors in but left the bits in there.
the rotors, it's destroyed itself. Can it get out the back?
Not really. Oh yeah. Yeah, it can do.
Yeah, so it's come through the cam pulley. But those are big bits, man.
Yeah, well, this one looks fine actually, on this side. But there's some on that side as well.
So it's munched up as it's come out the back of the cap, back of the cam pulley,
And gone through all the grinding.
and then it's ground. It's been a big grinder as it's come down.
This one looks okay looking.
Hence, there's got to be a limit to how big the chunks were. They've got to have come through the back of here.
There's quite big gaps there.
Yeah, there's reasonable gap. That's awesome.
And that one will be new too.
Yeah, I thought it was a Bosch cap instead of a genuine cap.
So someone hasn't fixed the problem properly.
The rotors have failed, munched up, done the cam timing, and they're putting new road caps and rotors in it, but not fixed the rest of the problem.
But obviously only happened in the last 20,000 k's, didn't it?
After the cam belt.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, that explains it.
Gee, you wonder what would cause that to blow apart though, eh?
Age. They get all hard and brittle.
eh?
They get hard and brittle. They crack on the ends. So that's the worst one I've seen. They crack up in here. So I did a video on that when they crack. And obviously they go to the next stage. And I've seen them crack out from the bolt holes. They crack out there as well. So this one's obviously gone to the next stage and actually disintegrated.
Should we line this back up and make sure that is definitely it?
Yes, we'll definitely do that. If you want, we'll put that, I'll get my big nut and put it in the front. So I'll slam that on the front. There's quite a bit of oil at the bottom there.
Yeah.
Should we put a crank seal in it too? I think we should. There's a lot of oil at the bottom. There's a heap of oil down there.
Up to you.
I went to get my idler, my stepper motor, and I didn't get your cam belt.
Not worried.
When this actually lines up, you'll notice that the rotors actually got lines as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But actually, it's
Yeah, I
just
think you showed me that when you put that engine together last time.
yeah. So the rotors actually have their own little places that they line up with.
So where's the mark on the bottom pulley?
Okay, so the bottom pulley, the mark is in the same spot as the key.
Yeah.
It's on that one above, and it comes up to the top
So
of
you
here.
got to turn it again to get your mark.
But it's actually no. These are right, and there's your mark there. But the actual dot that it's meant to be on is around here. So it's if I can get some cleaner in there. Yep. It's very oily down there. So the correct alignment mark is just around by the belt here.
Yeah, you did show it to me when you put that cam belt in the one.
Yeah, so it is. It is like 1, 2, 3 crankshaft teeth out.
Oh, that's good.
3 crankshaft teeth out. That's amazing that it still ran. Hence the timing was at 40 degrees. Hence it pinked.
But I mean, to be fair, when I started it this morning, I had it down here back to an untrained eye. Oh, yeah, it's just cold.
Yeah.
Sounded right.
Oh, when you actually put your foot up, it went absolutely flat. It was horrid.
Yeah, well, you
But
did it the other day. But yeah, I mean, like you said, 40 degrees, it wouldn't start. Probably.
it wouldn't run very good at all. I wouldn't have thought, but it ran
Quite nicely. It was,
surprisingly well, eh?
I mean, it backed in, not even under load, just at idle.
Yep. Was the grommet that the cam pulley goes through okay? That the cam sensor goes through okay?
On the back of the ute there. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, but look, the wiring on this cam sensor's actually been worn through on a pulley, gone through on a pulley.
Yeah, someone's fixed that.
So you're going to have to pull this sensor off, this unit, pull the rotor off and that unit off.
Right.
I'm getting a bit short of left-hand ones because they all do that.
Has that one been nicked there too? Is that alright?
That's just the insulation cracking on that one. So I'll go see if I can find a left-hand cam sensor wire, a cam belt and a crank seal for you. And that power steer pump is leaking as well. Look at all the gunge from it.
Yeah. I guess after 15 years it's time for a birthday.
Yeah.
Because what year was that engine?
And that, because it's going down to that alternator. The alternator's covered in oil and crap. It's had a new alternator put on it. This motor, this is pre-94.
Oh, yeah.
I actually know it's even earlier than that. It's pre-92.
So they've been around for a while then.
Yeah, so it's a 90, 91, 92, somewhere in that range.
So you drop the tension on the belt.
So if you just undo the 2 bolts here,
Oh, yeah.
drop the tensioner out,
Yeah.
and we'll squeeze the tensioner together again. Just very carefully in the vise. You can just slowly put it in. I've got plenty of pins on the board.
Yeah.
Everything else looks good, but that belt's had a bit of a stretch out. So,
Well, it could have mixed in or anything with.
yep. So you can pretty much just take the belt off now.
Yeah.
Take this rotor off, get this cover off,
Yeah.
and then get in and just clean the whole front down.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have to take that earth off, get the cover, clean all the front bits, spotless. I've lined up the cam timing, the cams, so we can just bring the crank around to the correct mark, and the belt will have marks on it anyway, have lines. Throw it on, tensioner back in, job done.
Drive it out of here.
Drive it out of here
After doing everything else.
after doing everything else. So we can see right in here the back of the distributor cap, the unit that the distributor cap bolts to and the rotor works in, cam sensor bracket, which has had a big rub up where the rotor's fell, where the rotor's failed. We've also got a rub through cam sensor wire, which is really common and causes running faults as well. So we're going to change that, I've happened to find a second hand one. I don't have any new ones at the moment. And we can see it's also broken the guide off the bottom by the crankshaft pulley. That'll be fine though. We've got leaking camshaft seals, so we're going to do those. And the customer's given the okay to fix the power steer pump. We're going to check out the back of that alternator. So as per normal, the job's growing a little bit, but we'll make this ute run like it should, and the customer will be happy. We're working away on the yellow ute, and mechanically it's coming along pretty well. But you might have noticed we've taken the wiring loom out of it as well. So I've got that sitting in front of me, and we're going to give it a bit of a makeover, a bit of a birthday. I would like to make it so we can communicate with the scan tool. That would make my life much easier. So normally in this sort of situation, I often do I'd like to do a full wiring video of this loom. But this isn't a virgin loom. It's already been wired into this ute. So it's going to be more of a repair video than anything, and incorporated into the main job for this ute. It's pretty similar to what I did on the high-ace van, if you watch that. So we'll give you a bit of a brief, and then I'm going to hook into it. We're not going to go into too much detail, but I'm going to get in and sort it out, make it look like a good loom again, and get some communication with the scan tool, of course. Get an engine check light, even if it's not going to the dash, at least so we can hook it up. So we'll have a quick look. So this is the early UCF 11 or UCF 10 loom. So it runs a alloy body airflow meter. It runs through the centre. There's a wire loom that goes in the middle of the plenum. Single wire oxygen sensors, and the double row 2 high in the plugs for the ECU. It's got 4 plugs, a 26, a 22, a 16, and another 26, which is a little bit separate. And it's got these plugs here, which are normally for the body loom. So I'm going to take those out. This one goes into the vehicle, so that's the power supplies at the moment. So I'm just going to confirm that they're okay, and then leave that alone. We're going to get rid of the traction control wiring, which is this big one here. Comes over to this plug here. That's going to leave. We're going to get rid of one of the sub TPS, and I'm going to get rid of this wiring loom, which used to go down to the gearbox, which was just cut off. We're going to put some new plugs on it. That one's okay. That one's missing its connector. That one's missing its connector. Missing connector, missing connector. So we'll sort that out and make it so it can all be installed back into the ute again. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Spare. So I'm going to get into it. As I said, I'll just do a real brief of what I'm doing. I'm not going to run through every single wire on this one and every single bit. We'll save that for a virgin loom that hasn't been wired before. Loom's looking a little bit different since I last talked to you. I went through this side out to the igniters, and those plugs are okay. Airflow meter plug's okay. That's the oxygen sensor wiring. It's looking okay. It's a little bit crispy, but it's not too bad. The earth, I've checked it's long enough. It was down the back of the engine, but I've checked it's long enough to go to the side of the head because it's a bit hard to get at the back of the engine. And then I've lifted a lot of the covers off. I haven't lifted this one off, but every single one of these that I touch it just breaks. They're very, very crispy, which is a bit of a pain, but it's kind of expected. This is like an early motor, pre-92. Most of the listings for this computer list it pre-92. So 27 years? Yeah, 27 years ago. So you can't really complain about a loom that's done 27 years of use in a hot engine bay. Next, I'm going to whip most of this transmission loom out. These looms have got these plugs, and I found when I went in here there's a whole lot of wires cut off. I've got that one there. That one went back to the computer. And if I give this one a pull, that was a speedo wire. Pull the right one. That was a speedo wire. And this is a speedo wire. It leaves an earth and a grey wire. And even these plugs are pretty brittle and falling apart. The only really strange thing I found in here was there was a blue-yellow wire that had been cut off in the loom. And that was for the hydraulic fan solenoid. So there's the first plug gone. Straight in the rubbish. This one. So for this one, that was a power feed down to the gearbox, the same as that one. There is a concern in here. Actually, I had these two, these black reds, and these were power feeds for the gearbox solenoids, and they would have actually had power going to them because they're linked into the idle stepper motor wiring. So that is a little bit of a concern. And most of these, that's hydraulic fan, which I'd pulled out here. There we go. So those two are your hydraulic fan. And if I pull that blue yellow, it was only short anyway. Straight in the rubbish. So if you guys were watching the high ace van video, you would have seen very similar. That was done in place, but removing that gearbox loom. That one doesn't want to come. That one's there's a gearbox. I've got that one listed as diagnostic box, which is that green. Got this one that does something. So I'm not actually sure what that green wire does at the moment. I better just look on my diagrams before I go hauling it out. So we're down to 3. So we'll just look on my diagrams. So often when I'm working on my own looms, I use it as an opportunity to update my information. And this one just said green white diagnostic box. It's that one there, which is CC2. So it's coming out. So there's another plug gone. Traction control, we're going to take that out as well. So that's this plug here. So that comes, don't need that anymore. This one goes to the sub throttle position sensor, so that's coming out. And I'll deal to that one where it goes into the ECU in just a moment. Now this one's a bit more tricky. We've got a bit more stuff that we might actually need, like stuff that goes to the diagnostic box. So what I'm going to do here, just because it's scraggly and there's these extra wires hanging around, is to get rid of those extra wires while I'm still deciphering all the others. So here's a start wire, and hopefully that does actually get start power, because that goes to the likes of the cold start injector timer. So we cut it back at the join and then retape it firmly so it doesn't short out at all. So as I said, this is for there's a start for the cold start injector power, and it also would have gone down to the gearbox for the start inhibit switch, so it didn't start in gear. But of course, now being manual, we don't have that problem at all. And here's our two wires that were a power feed for the solenoids and also to the idle speed control unit. So they were just taped up with those rest of those wires, which really isn't ideal. Same deal, back to the join, cut it off at the crimp, tape it up. Right, now I'm going to remove the gearbox wiring. So this is a speed sensor wire here, and these will go back to the ECU. So I'm going to reverse them. Instead of going through and checking the pinouts of the ECU, I'll just pull them out of the gearbox, pop them out of the ECU plug, because I know that they go to the gearbox and they're not needed. And that way I can do it without having to refer to diagrams every 5 minutes. Here's our grey wire coming out. We just give it a little bit of a pull, and that one's already cut off. Does pay to pop the locks before trying to pull the wires out. Just a helpful hint. And the last speed sensor wires there. You can see they're a twisted pair, so they're quite easy to find and trace. All the gearbox loom is now gone. It's in the rubbish bin. I've got the two sub TPS wires there to deal with, and we're trying to put a diagnostic plug in it. I'm going to spend some time, here's the hydraulic fan wiring, we don't need that anymore, but it is taped in pretty tight. So as I'm going through here, see, I might be able to get it here. Here it goes. So I'll sort those as I'm in there. Can't get in there, that one. That black wire for the... So the black wire is for that hydraulic fan. I really should do a video on the hydraulic fan to explain how that works. For the sub TPS, we've already got the 2 signal wires out. So I've got the earth and the 5 volt, so we're going to whip them out as well. Just going to whip them off here at the moment. So there's the sub TPS plug, and same deal, I'm going to unwrap the tape, cut it off at the crimp, and tape it up nicely. Next thing I'm going to do, because the diagnostic plug is through the center here, I'm going to pull the centerpiece to pieces, modify this diagnostic plug, even if it doesn't have a check light on the dash, though it would be ideal if it can. So I'm going to try and sort that out. But next I'm going to finish this TPS wiring, modify that diagnostic plug, and I'll go through changing these injector plugs. I'm not going to show that. We're going to go through and do all those and do a set of plugs on this loom. And that will pretty much have that main bit of the loom finished. A bit of sorting in this area, put a diagnostic connector on it, sort out these stray wires here, pull a couple more out, and it'll be looking really good. So I'll come back to you with a bit more progress part way through. But already starting to look a heap better. It's getting late. However, I've got one side of this loom done. So I had to replace the plugs anyway. So I thought I might as well cover it in braid. Take all as much of that old plastic stuff off as I could. Only got the 1 TPS now. Again in braid. And injector plugs replaced and all out into braid. Into braid. And a bit of cloth tape around the plastics to hold them together. That's going to sit back on like a factory one, but looking a whole lot neater. Loom is coming along pretty good. I was waiting for my soldering iron to heat up so I could just melt the end of the braid before I put it on. So I've added the diagnostic plug for in the cabin. So that goes to the semicircle diagnostic plug that's normally under the dash. At the same time, I modified the one on the engine, so it's got all the signals in it correctly. The plug that was already in here was actually, this thing was pretty well wide. I've just extended a couple of the wires just nicely so it comes off on its own little loom a bit better. And we've got the plugs into the ECU with all the extra wires removed. And you'll see there's one wire here, that's for the W, the check light wire, which is in that end plug. I've tidied up through the centre here and replaced the plug on the idle stepper. I've just got to do down through here now, and that's pretty much ready to go back in the hole. Over on the ute, with the leaking power steer pump, that's going to be changed. You can see it's quite bad when we look in here. You can actually see all the bits of plastic from that rotor been through like a big grinder, been ground up. And there's quite a bit of oil up around the cam seals. Not hard, it's a bit hard to see them, but there's quite a bit of oil there. And we're fitting up an oil cooler to go with the power steering along the front of the ute. It's going to sit behind the bumper a bit, but it'll still help dissipate a bit of the heat and hopefully make that pump last a lot longer. We're just building up some brackets. The power steer pumps leak all the time. It's really common just because they're old, and then it goes into the alternator and fills the alternator up with oil. So this alternator is full of oil. It has been replaced at some point, but it is shocker. I don't think I'm going to get it all out. So I think the safest option to make this ute reliable is just to pop another one on. And I'm going to put one on with a slightly smaller body, so it'll have better clearance. Because it's quite close to the power steer box, it'll be a bit smaller in the alternator, give us a little bit more clearance. Right, back into doing some work on this loom. Test fit of the oil cooler. Sure, it's tucked behind the bumper, but it's still going to disperse a lot of heat. There's a bit of airflow around the bottom of it. We are limited in space, so that's looking really good. Happy with that. We did notch out the fins a little bit just to make sure we got enough clearance in front. Means we could set it back further. And then we'll run the lines. We put grommets through so we don't chafe on those lines. Really happy with that. Heaps of oil coming out of this left hand cam seal. So all the main lube is now done, all taped up, braid, and where I couldn't get the braid on easily I've used cloth tape. Diagnostic box all modified. Breather for the fuel tank or the charcoal canister, that's gone because this ute isn't running it. Taken off the piece of plastic that was coming directly off here and the ugly rubber, and I've gone with a bit of conduit, and I'll tidy this up once it goes into the cabin. And I've of course adapted made it so my adapter will fit on. And right now the next little bit of loom, the front crank loom's coming out, and I'm going to look at that as well. That can go in the rubbish. So this loom's all ready to go back into the vehicle. I'll hook up the check light, engine check light, so it comes back to my diagnostic and out to the one under the bonnet once it's in the cabin. I've almost finished doing the front loom. However, I think we've got a little bit of an issue over here with the tappet cover. Doesn't come off, eh?
Brake booster's fine.
Oh.
Steering arm.
Steering column?
There's not much in it.
What about if we...
I was wondering if we can rock the engine on the engine mounts or something. Might be enough. Because if you go up this way, it's literally bugger all. There's that, like that little oil feed that's on the inside. It's getting it as well.
So if we jack the motor up at the same time as you lift it, because if we lift it now, it's going to get closer to the brake booster.
Mm.
Though if the brake booster wasn't there, would we get it out? Give it another try?
Yeah, we would, but that's a pain in the ass to take off.
Is that how we do it?
That was going to be my other one. Remove that.
That was the way. It's pretty clean inside. What's the other side look like? It's dirty at the back, but that's all on the top, so it's got to be from that tappet cover. This side's always a little dirtier, but it's still pretty clean, eh?
Yep. Why is that?
It's actually easy to do the injectors too now, while we've got all that other shit out as well. So you might want to lift the injectors, do those injector seals. This side's always dirty, just the way the emission system works. Breathes all the crap through this side and then into the PCV.
You're replacing that, the hose?
Yeah, I'll probably have another bit somewhere.
And are you replacing the valve and
The grommet.
Yeah.
Yes, the grommet in there, they're in that box. So put a new PCV valve grommet in it. They're all in the parts, in the seals box. Yep. No.
Alright.
Onto here. Yep. If you smack me in my face, I'll be upset.
I'd probably be upset too if I was about to smack you in the face.
There's nothing wrong with that grommet, eh? Nice and rubbery.
No, not really.
Smash the tappet cover is just what we need, eh? I'm running out of getting low on spares too.
Well, you know it would be cool though, a yellow set of tappet covers.
Off-road yellow. Woohoo! Got it.
Fuck, that came out with a hell of a... Ooh.
And then you try not to drop the grommet inside. We're going to put half of it inside. There's rubber again.
Mm.
That's my finger, but yep, got him.
I'm not ready. I'm going to get the... A minute. It's right there.
Well, it looks like you're taking all. Wicked. Oh, you did well.
I always take it all. Mama didn't raise it quick.
I think we got it all.
A little bit that fell out, I think, might have been that, but...
Nice soft tablet cover gasket, eh? I like it, let's just break it in half.
Can you get that stuff off?
Yeah, but at degrees it takes that off.
I'll do it out.
Cool.
Unless you want to...
While we're in here, we're going to change the injector seals as well. So we just lifted the fuel rail, out came the injectors, and down onto the box, and you can see I can't squeeze them. Those ones can squeeze, these ones can't, and they're all distorted. And the cushions, we're doing the cushions on the top as well, hard as rocks. So that's pretty common. 27-year-old rubber, expecting it to be nice and soft and supple is probably asking too much. And what we have is we get air leaks. It might only be slight around those injector seals, but it makes a difference to the bottom end performance. I popped some cam seals in as well, and they were hard. We've got them over here. They were hard as rocks. But at some point it has had a crankshaft seal, so that's okay, but it's getting a new one, of course. We have tablet covers back on it with new seals. When it goes on, you put a little bit of sealant just around where it changes from a flat surface to the rounded surface and across the half moons at the front and the back. Cam sensors are in, idlers are in, water pump is back on, and we better line up this bottom timing mark a little bit better. I've lined up this, oh yeah, that one's one tooth out and that one's on mark now. So I'm using a genuine belt, which makes it a bit easier. So that bottom line in here lines up with the dot. The double lines go each side of the screw thread, and that should put this dot in the right place. That's correct, and this is going to be out one.
Yeah.
Well, he found you. I was shopping. Right, lines are lined up. See how easy that was? Lined up. Lined up. Lined up each side of the bolt hole, and that mark lines up in there. We'll put a tensioner on it. We'll set a tensioner on it. We'll squeeze that tensioner back and then we'll put it in. Then you do 2 laps and check all these marks line up again, so you know that it's right. The lines won't. Now in most cases I put a new tensioner on, but if you're very gentle with the vise, you can squeeze them back up and reuse them. This tensioner has only done 20,000 Ks, so not that many, so we'll use it again. Oh no, it's not quite in. Here it is. And here it is. Found it. Struggling to find that hole. Put a Loctite on the bolts and fire it in the hole. They've got a little shank on them. Where's the other one of those?
So don't you need to put tension on it?
It's got tension on it. Tension is in place.
Yeah.
You don't, well, it's not going to jump. It doesn't have any bits of rotor under it now, so it's not going to jump. But just having the tension in there is plenty. Okay, so with the back lined up there, that one lines up there, that one lines up there. Perfect. Pull the pin. Job done. Tensioned. And it'll just tension up to the correct amount. Right, put the front back on it. Make it make some noise. The yellow ute's starting to look like an engine again. Leads are all on, all the top end's been put on, all the camber covers are put on. We've slipped the loom in, so with the braid in it looks pretty good. On this side I had to make a little bit of a change. I hadn't quite made these wires because they weren't quite long enough, just the way I'd sat together, so I've just gave it a little bit of an adjustment. This engine has the cold start injector, so we've put that on underneath, under the intake manifold, so that's been done. And we're sitting on the intake manifold and I pick up the vacuum line that goes to the brake booster. We'll just put that one out of the way. And I thought, well, it doesn't look like there's a one-way valve in it. We'll just have a bit of a check. So you just put your mouth on it and give it a blow, and it just blows straight through it. So there's no one-way valve, just to annoy me. So your brake booster must have a one-way valve. Now this one was a diesel, so it would have had a canister here, a vacuum canister, and that had the one-way valve on it. So when that gets removed, what I do is I go get an inline one like this. So that's off a Camry or a Corolla, and this is my last one in existence. So we're going to cut the line and fit up that one-way valve in that brake booster line. So that's quite important, that's done. Over here, you can see it was nuts and bolts going through the firewall. So we're going to put riv nuts in there so you can actually just screw it in from the outside just to make it easier to work on. And we're going to secure the wiring through the front so it can't rub on the belt, which is quite important. Oil cooler's looking lovely for the power steering and the lines are done. They look really smart. I'm really, really happy with the way that came up. And the new alternator fitted with the new power steer pump, or the rebuilt power steer pump. So we're making good progress. We'll talk to you once it's a bit further along. So here's our one-way valve. We've got an E with a little arrow pointing to the engine, which does help instead of having to blow on it. And we've got some proper air brake hose. And I've seen it with silicone hose and it's sucked in. It's just dumb. So proper air brake hose is the way to go. And I'm going to put that valve in and clamp it all up so we'll actually have proper brakes on this vehicle. We've removed the vacuum lines along the top here, those steel lines. So they're going, and we're just going to run a vacuum line direct from the manifold to the fuel pressure regulator. It's the only one we need. This one didn't have any breather for the fuel tank, though I do prefer to run the VSV for the fuel tank breather if the vehicle has got that capability. And we need to change this bit of hose too, because was sucked in. Water hose is getting changed here. We're taking one with all the water hoses blocked off, as per my video on what hoses to remove in a cooling system. This vehicle had an aftermarket thermostat, so we're taking that out and we're going to put a genuine thermostat in it with a brand new cover. They get a bit corroded and yuck, and they get bubbles inside here. And this is actually, it's a bit hard to see, but there's a big bubble up in here. And it's just all tearing to pieces inside. This one was really quite cool, because when it came in, it was actually antifreeze coming through the plastic itself onto the outside of it. So new thermostat housing, new thermostat onto this housing that's had the fittings blanked off. And the stepper motor's been rebuilt and had the lines taken off it as well. So here's the stepper with the water lines taken off. So that's really easy to fit now. We just better get a new gasket for it. This is the throttle body off our yellow ute. And here's your throttle stop at the bottom of the throttle body. So it's not the one at the top. And I keep saying this, but I keep seeing issues. And that one was wound up. But here's our throttle stop at the bottom. And it's actually started winding itself off. So that's an issue with this. This vehicle's had idling issues, and people haven't really known what they're doing with it. So we're going to put that back in. It's also had the dampener removed, which I'm not a fan of. Can cause the odd stalling issue. My next step will be to screw this back up and try and set it up approximately right, give it a bit of a clean. I'm not going to do the modification to it right now. We've done a lot of work on this ute, and we're coming to the end of the budget. This can be set back to standard. We'll put it back on with the intake as it is at the moment, and I'll discuss that with the customer before I go any further. It's all going back together now. Oh, better put that on. Now just a note, when you're bleeding up a cooling system, well, this one I put 4 litres, about 4 litres of antifreeze into the radiator, and it was full. However, I then undid the bleeder off the top of the engine, which I have already taken. I'd already taken it out and put some anti-seize on it and a new washer, and I've continued to fill it up probably at about the 4 litres extra, 4 or 5 litres extra now, and it's still filling up. On this one, the top radiator hoses, part of it's actually higher than the radiator, so it's got to run over that and flow into the block. We've got the block drains done up. They are located each side. There we go. That's us full. It's just about on the top of here. And we see it's in that bleed up. I've filled up the power steering. We are yet to modify the throttle body on this one. I am expecting a few other issues with the idle speed yet. Not a bad start. Yep, oil lights come back on. Now I am starting and stopping it for a reason. That allows the idle to reset. The ute now runs. I'm really happy about that. And I've plugged into the under bonnet diagnostic plug. This one's pretty interesting. I went in, I plugged in my scan tool, and it wouldn't communicate. Now, as you know, I talk about this quite a bit. This normally doesn't communicate. I've modified it to work. It didn't have all the wires in it required to communicate with a scan tool. I should actually do a video about it. I might struggle a little bit because I'd often use words that begin with F and rhyme with duck about it, because it kind of annoys me when people ring me and say I've plugged into the engine diagnostic and I can't get in. But anyway, that's for another day. I plugged into it and I couldn't get in, even after I'd modified it. And I went into the scan tool as a Lexus LS400. I plugged into the one inside the cabin, so I've got a check light set up inside the cabin here. And it's flashing away, as you can see. So I connected in, and I connected into this one, the correct one that's normally under the dash, the semicircle, and I got in fine. Double checked my wiring, it was all fine. And then I actually did the check light thing from out under the bonnet. And that was fine. So I went into the scan tool under a Toyota, and instead of specifying a model, I put it as another, and I got in fine. And I've just gone in again as a Lexus and an unspecified model, and it worked fine. So there's nothing wrong with the diagnostics. It's just the protocol in the scan tool doesn't like this particular computer. But I can talk to it. Tells me we're idling at 700 RPM, or 625 RPM. Yep, the tacho's looking about right. What I'm actually most interested in at the moment is whether the oxygen sensors are functioning. And they aren't. And whether the knock sensor functions. It's not bringing anything up. I'm going to change the inside one and have a bit of a look. Uses the semicircle Toyota connector, and you will need to power the scan tool externally. And this one I can go in as LS400 just fine. Reading trouble codes just fine. And neither of the oxygen sensors are functioning. So the ute's up and running, which is really good. It was one of those ones I just had a feeling that it was going to give us a bit of grief, and it's showing a knock sensor code. Now it's all back together. But just changing the knock sensors for the sake of it was kind of a bit pointless, but I kind of got that feeling. Came in for a detonation problem, the timing was way out. We didn't take the lower manifold off, so it's not too bad, and it doesn't take that long to drop the top manifold off. Of course, people say it's a prick of a job. So I might actually even do it, if we do this manifold off, I might do it in full frame, no editing, and see how fast we can get in to look at the starter and pull the knock sensors out, just to show that it's not such a pain in the ass as a lot of people think. We've done a lot of progress. I'm going to talk to the customer, have a bit of a chat, give them an update, and we'll keep going, I think. Talk to you soon. This ute's suffering the old wobbly shifter scenario. What I took out was this piece. And it's meant to have this piece in there with the rubber washer on the bottom and the seat that actually sits onto there like that. So I'm going to pop that in there too. I'll pop a new bush on the bottom just because these ones do fall apart and there'll be a bit of wear on it. And that shifter is going to be much, much nicer, not as floppy as it was. Well worth it for the few dollars that it takes just to give a nice gear shift. Shift is much more positive with the new bushes. And that's something that you're actually going to notice because you're connected with the gear stick. As with the accelerator pedal, I sorted out all the free play in the accelerator pedal. It had like way too much before. So I've got it down to about 20 mils there maybe. And it goes all the way to full throttle. Another connection with it. The clutch was actually pretty good. We're back on the yellow ute. We've just popped the inlet manifold off, which we've just done a full video on. Let's have a look at here. Here's the knock sensors, which is our issue. And this one's actually breaking and falling apart. Some point, there's a little bit of dirt in here. So we're going to get the vacuum cleaner out, because that's the best way to get rid of this crap. I'll pull that starter motor out and have a look at it. Give it a bit of a tidy up in here, and we'll pop it back together. Here's the wiring going to the starter motor. And you can see the insulation is just falling off. So there's actually bare exposed wires. And I've changed the starter at some point and put an extension in here, which isn't ideal. We're going to get that starter out of here. The knock sensor plugs are quite corroded, and that might be our problem. And I know I don't have that style. So I'll come up with a plan. Got it.
Seems alright.
Yeah, seems right. Yeah, especially the no insulation. And the no insulation up there. So where else has it got no insulation? I think I'll make some new ones, eh? I'm going to need a piece of conduit just to slide down there. So if you get the conduit for me, and get the conduit like some ½ inch, and we'll slide that down there while I'm in the mood for doing that. Pop the contacts out of the starter. It's had a starter motor. When they put it in, they let it sit into the mud, which was really good of them. But it's actually a proper Toyota one as well, a genuine one. You can put that back together, that's good. No problems there, and just get a wire brush and take that dirt and crap off, because it looks like crap. No other reason. Got some scissors for me? There's the plug that the knock sensor signals go through. So I'm going to check that they actually go back to the ECU. It's those ones there. It's not that one. It's that one. To the other small wire. Are you on the other small wire? Yep. That's number 1. That was on the other small wire. No, the other wire is the start trigger. Okay, I'm going to make a new loom. Okay. Because we can't deal with that loom. G'day guys, our yellow ute's back together, all fixed, all repaired. So after putting the manifold back on, after I built the new loom going into the knock sensors, put some other knock sensors in it, put it all back together, checked it with the scan tool. and he wanted to fight me. It had a code again for a knock sensor, just number 1. I did some swapping around of wiring and double checked and traced it all through, and I came up and I was able to swap the wiring from the plug under the bonnet back to the ECU. So, and it then changed sides. The fault would change sides. So I knew it was under the manifold. So as you saw, it's no big drama to pull it off. I did it on my own. Took about an hour. Manifold off, changed the knock sensor again, put it back together. It was just one of those things that you put another one in and it's faulty, just to annoy me. But put it all back together, and that's all good. In there, we've also, actually there's a knock sensor. So that was changed. The original 1, 2 was the round plug one. There's one over here, that's the complete one. There's the complete one. This normally got the rubber, the little band on it. Now I have fitted the later model knock sensors to this vehicle, no problem. So if you do have these ones and they've failed, you can put the later ones in. I knew it was a risk, but I gave it a go anyway, and it worked. With the knock sensors back in, on the scan tool, it all tested out fine, which I was really happy about, of course. These are pretty simple. It was just a matter of diagnosing, going through, not rushing into things, and I got it pretty quickly. So let's go through, just as a summary. It came in originally, it was pinking. As soon as you put your foot up, it would detonate. And we checked the timing, 40 degrees before TDC, with the check light, with the check connector connected. So that was a problem. I thought it had delaminated the front pulley, because I didn't think it drove too well to be 40 degrees out, or 30 degrees out, but it was in fact. What had happened was one of the ignition rotors in the past had failed. The rotors, caps and rotors had been changed, but they hadn't resolved the cam timing issue. So we fixed that. In doing so, I put a cam belt on. So it got a cam belt. I was worried about it, so I wasn't going to take that risk. So I got a cam belt on. At the same time, we did some cam seals and a crank seal. So that was pretty straightforward. While we were at it, it had leaking tappet cover gaskets. So the old tappet covers got changed. So lovely soft rubber tappet gasket. So it's sarcastic. And some spark plug seals. And the other little seals, that the sealing washers. So they were done. Need some more of them. We'll get rid of the knock sensor. While we had the cam belt off, these bearings, which is for the top idler and for that tensioner, and I do have a video coming on how to change them. I change a lot of those because they're often noisy. They got done. PCV valve grommet, hard as rocks. That got done. I know these are always a problem. So injector seals, here we go. To the injectors, they came off. And that's a rubber seal, hard as rocks. Do the ones into the top just because we get it apart. And then there's a little cushion at the top. Hard as rocks. So they got done. Oh, they're everywhere. You saw the wiring loom came off. So the wiring loom came out of the cabin as well, onto the bench. There's the bag of old connectors. That's most of them. Now with the wiring loom, this is a 27-year-old engine at least. It's a pre-92. So it didn't make sense just to leave the loom on there. As soon as you touched it, and to take the tappet covers off, to take the injector seals out, we were going to touch the loom. It was going to fall apart. It's just the way it is. So I give it a refab. And actually the wiring in this one, the wires were okay. So lots of new connectors went into it. At the same time, the EFI temp sensor, as you can see here, they get discoloured. They get quite brittle, and I see a few of them just break off. They get blamed for lots of problems, but I don't see them fail because every conversion I do, I now put one in it. Don't stuff around. That's a 27-year-old sensor. It's done a great life. Reliability is the key, so in goes a new one. So that sensor was done. Wiring was all tidied up and all those extra wires were removed, as I do a lot of. I'm not going to do a full video on a loom that's not a virgin. We will do in the future if one of these come in. And then you get all those other little bits and pieces. The water hoses to the throttle body. So they're down in here normally. That's gone. One at the back's gone. The stepper motor, that's been rebuilt, which is a little bit sticky. You'll notice actually the loom here, and I did the loom and braid and the all extensions. I see a lot of power steer pumps leaking, and this one was the same. All underneath it was just caked up, and it had filled an alternator that had been replaced at some point up with oil. And that alternator was actually suffering from signs of the oil going in. The bits on the pieces on the back, whilst they are somewhat oil resistant, they're not totally oil resistant, and there was oil everywhere in the back of the alternator. So another alternator, another power steer pump. And at the same time, a lot of the time we see the power steer pumps fail because they get too hot. So a cooler went in. So the cooler's tucked in behind the number plate up on that front panel, and it looks really good. It is a little shrouded, but it's going to do its job perfectly fine. Doing the cam belt, the wiring to the crank sensor here had rubbed through. It had been onto a pulley sometime, and that has the potential to cause problems. So that was done. It was actually really good. I found a new supplier of brand new sensors. This vehicle got a second-hand one, but I have found brand new ones now, so I've got them in stock. So I'm seeing this problem more and more. A little bit of the rubber wear from around the job. PCV valve hose. That was just going soft. Vacuum hose going to the brake booster. There was no one-way valve, so we did a one-way valve. Just some normal maintenance, some spark plugs. I checked the leads. They were 2015, so they were done a few years ago. Did I say I did an air filter? I did an air filter. Took off the vacuum line to the breather for the fuel tank. So the fuel tank VSV, breather VSV, that was removed. The thermostat housing was replaced, and a thermostat, genuine thermostat, was fitted. I did go through the front loom as well while we had that off and put new plugs on the coil plug there. Gaskets, throttle body gasket, idle speed control. So there's quite a few other gaskets that were done as well. There was some bushes into the gearbox. It was a bit floppy. So that's the bottom seat. But there's another seat that the shifter sits on. That was done. And it had a problem with the speedo. It wasn't working. And I could turn the speedo drive, and it wasn't connecting inside the box. It's had a box change. Someone just put the speedo drive in without checking. It was bigger than normal. This one had was a 1033, and I was able, it might have been 1133. I'm not sure now, but it also worn off. So I was able to secure, find a brand new 35 tooth gear. At some point I'd found the part numbers for all of those, so that was really cool. So I was able to order a brand new one. With the scan tool attached, we found the oxygen sensors weren't functioning, so they were done as well. There's a piece of the rotor that had all been munched up. There was a heap of that shown in the video. And there's a piece of the block that was broken off when the rotor's gone through it. So the cam timing in this ute, and I didn't believe it. After we checked the ignition timing in this ute, it was at 40 degrees. So that's 30 degrees out. It should be at 10 when I bridged the terminals. It was at 40. And I didn't believe it would run so well with it like that. I just didn't believe it. So I thought it would have delaminated a crank pulley. It hadn't. It had jumped 3 teeth on the crankshaft. So 1.5 teeth on the cams, 3 teeth on the crankshaft. It still started well. It was shit to drive. As soon as you put your foot up it, it was horrid. At any revs, it was just 2.5 to 3 grand. The engine rattled, and it was jerky and yuck. But we found the issue, and we've solved it, and a whole lot of other issues, and given the ute a good birthday. And it's going to be a good, reliable ute for a long time to come. And a little bit of modernisation that we've done. Yeah, those water hoses are gone. I've done the throttle body mod, so that looks a heap neater. And just, and like this little bit of plastic, it wasn't there, so I went and dug one out of my my storage facility, my container. So I've done that as well. It's all gone back together, it's running again, and it drives bloody well. It's really nice to have the ability to actually have a budget to spend some money and fix these problems properly. And it means this ute's going to be reliable for a long time to come. I see a lot of these Hilux utes that are getting run down. People aren't prepared to spend the money on them. You know, they've gone for a few years and people have put up with issues, but they were never quite right. So turning your hand at it makes a big difference. And this is one reason a lot of the cartoon company utes don't come up for sale, or the vans or the Hilux, the four-wheel drives, because people keep them, because they are right and they're built to be used for a long time. And I see a lot of other ones that just have issues, and there's not the knowledge out there to solve them. Things like adjusting the throttle so it's working properly. And we've sorted out the idle on this one. Someone had been in there, the throttle stop was wind off at the bottom, the top one was wind down. It's not meant to be the throttle stop. So that's all good now. So I'm really happy with it. Goes probably one of the better utes I've driven. It's not so low that it's scraping on the ground. So it handles pretty good. I think it's going to need some brakes. It's got a little bit of a shudder in the front, but the customer will sort all that, make it all road legal, and go out and enjoy it. And he will, because it's going to be reliable now. He knows it's sorted out properly. So I'm really looking forward to hearing his progress, hearing that it's on the road. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've tried to put in a lot of details as I can. And in all my videos, there's a few hints on different jobs, but I don't put it all in one video, and it's just the way it goes. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got this far, hopefully you've subscribed to my channel, push the like on the video, and we'll talk to you again. Catch you later.